Hello, welcome to part 2 of tutorial 3 for Auburn University INDD 5960. In this particular tutorial, we're going to finish up a drum machine that we are building using Unreal's animation toolset, Matinee, and the scripting setup, Kismet. And what you see here is basically the results of the first half of the tutorial, and that is our level setup here, where we remove the controls from the player, animate the camera so that the camera is in a fixed position, and attach particles to our spinning wheel so that we get the animated arcs that bounce down the screen. And then here are the matinees that drive each of the individual arcs. Now, we only did one in the last tutorial, and here you'll see 3. The expectation is that you'll go ahead and do the second 2 on your own. They are exactly the same. The only difference being that they have a different particle set attached to them, as well as a different spinning wheel that is located, moved over from the original one we did in the first tutorial, or the first half of this tutorial. The one other difference that you might notice is play rate. Play rate is ultimately what controls this entire beat machine and what we're using to manipulate whether the arcs are playing at all or playing at a quarter beat or a full beat. And this is really the magic to the entire drum machine game that we're putting together. Now, you're not going to see this on your Matinee. You'll want to go ahead and right-click the Matinee and go to Expose Variable. And then from there, you will find in this list play rate. Mine's already exposed, so it's not there, but you'll see in here play rate. Now, these variables, this list of variables is the exact same list of variables that you will find in the properties for any Matinee. So let's see, open that up. This window here and all these properties are the variables that you can expose through this menu. There's a lot of goodies hidden in here. So anytime you see a variable in here that you want to manipulate through Kismet, so let's say you want to turn looping on and off, you can right-click up here, go to Expose Variable, go to Looping, click that, and then you will get a looping control on your Matinee that you can then script to and toggle on and off at different points of time. What we're going to be doing is, now that play rate is exposed, we're going to add that float there at the bottom. You can do that simply by right-clicking the blue udder here, and then create new float variable. We're going to be dialing this number from, 0 is stop the animation, up to whatever number we want, whatever number we feel is a maximum speed. And we'll be dialing it up and down to control the tempo of the animation. All right, so this is where it all begins. It's with the product of the first half of the tutorial with play rate exposed. And there you have it, we're done. Good job, guys. I'm kidding. I want to review real quick what we will end up with. It looks like a big mess, but it's actually just a few simple nodes that control everything. So this will just take a minute, but it's good to know what we're walking into first. So if you'll remember, just seconds ago we were talking about play rate is exposed here on this animation. You can see all this mess is writing to this number. So what is that mess? Well, if we start all the way back here, you'll see mobile simple swipes. This is what controls what happens when you swipe left, right, up, and down. And what I have connected to will just work with the bass drum and swiping left here. What you'll see here is when you swipe left, I have added a number. I mean, no more complicated than literally just addition. I am adding 1 to 0. And then I have a node here that, while this node is its only reason to live is to add numbers, this one is to compare numbers. And here it says, hey, if A is less than B, so if this number is less than this number over here, and I'll explain that in a minute, then what I want you to do is write the product of that. So we have now said I've added 1, so this 0 is now going to be a 1. And if 1 is less than or equal to 10, then I want you to write, that's what this node does, it writes. I want you to write that 1 into this circle. So now we have a number 1 sitting in this circle at this point in time in the script, and it sits there. So how does the Matinee know to start playing? This is the number that we want Matinee to use for its tempo. Well, right here you'll see a node that I called fetch swipes. What I've done is I am timing, I'm metering out how often this animation fetches a number. It doesn't grab it anytime it wants. In this case, it grabs it every 2 seconds. And this way, I can make sure that each of the Matinees are firing their animations off every 2 seconds, or as frequently as I want. It could be a half a second, 1 second, 10 seconds. The point is, I am making certain that this Matinee does not get a new value unless it's every 2 seconds. And I have all of the Matinees appended to that timer so that they all fire off at the same time. So that keeps our beats in sync. So every 2 seconds, that little this little loop right here, this delay says, okay, fire off this node, which again, just like the guy over here, writes. It's just simply just writes a number. So it fetches this number from here, which we said earlier was 1, and then it writes it to here. So now the Matinee knows that it's supposed to play at 1, and now the Matinee continues forward. So this happens every time somebody swipes. So I swipe left 4 times. That means this add float says 1, 2, 3, 4. Each time it's adding, and then comparing, and then writing to here. And then every 2 seconds, that the sum of those added numbers is written to here, and the Matinee knows how fast to play. The comparison here, I noted this number 10 at the beginning. The comparison here is simply to put a clamp, to put a max value of swipes in place so that somebody can't swipe so many times that the animation literally breaks, where it just stops making any sense. So I have this set to 10. So the sole purpose of this node is to say, add up as many swipes as you want, but when somebody has swiped more than, in this case, 10 times, I'm no longer going to write that sum to here. Instead, as soon as A is greater than B, I am instead going to print a message to the screen. That's what this node does. The log node, it logs a message. So here it's going to log a message, and that message is going to be beats maxed. And then I have it appended to the rolling wheel, the actor that rolls down the screen. So this beat maxed message gets drawn on the wheel, and it moves down the screen with the wheel. So there you go. That's what we're going to build. And it'll probably only take us about another 10 to 15 minutes to actually build it. All right, here we are back on our scene from the first half of this tutorial. Let's go ahead and disconnect all of these wires from the level start. We don't want that, because from here forward, we want to manipulate all of these Matinees based on somebody's input with the screen, swipe. So we are going to go get that. We need a new event. Oh, excuse me there. All right, new event, input, mobile simple swipes. Okay, so we'll drop that in. This is what's going to be looking for what the what our user does on the screen. Now, the simple swipes, it includes some control for how how touchy it is, basically. So for right now, I recommend you just go ahead and set the tolerance to 100, which is pretty general, and then the distance to 5, which is pretty short. On at least it is on my iPad. So feel free to play with these variables. For right now, this seems to work well enough for me. So at this point, we could fire off any one of these animations just with somebody swiping it by pulling a line from swipe left to one of our animations. But that's not what we want to do. What we want to do is, like I explained a minute ago, we want to actually add up the number of swipes and then push them into the Matinee so that the Matinee knows every 2 seconds how many swipes it currently has in its queue. So we'll do that by creating a new add float. So we are going to go to Action, Math, Add Float. All right. Now, real quick here. Floats and integers are just numbers. The difference is that an integer does not include a decimal point, right? No decimal point. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4. A float includes decimal point and some number of values before and after that decimal point. The reason it's called a float is because that decimal point may float. You have a certain number of numbers you can work with, and you can put that decimal point at the end and work with huge numbers, like 1,000,000 points something. Or you could work with very, very small numbers where you have 1.1 millionth. That's why it's called a float, because that point floats up and down the string of numbers. So in this case, since we are talking about play rate, and play rate can be manipulated at a decimal level, we're using floats. So I'm going to get rid of this integer. That was just to show you guys what I'm talking about. All right, so what we know is we need to add this float number when somebody swipes left. So this basically is counting the number of swipes. So we are going to add 1 to another number. So we'll go ahead and create our next number. Right-click the blue letter, make yourself a number, pull it around so that you can see what you're doing. And from here, we're going to go ahead and create one more, and this is the result of the addition of A and B. So A plus B equals float result. All right, so that's what we need to get started. Now, we need to do our comparison. The comparison is to keep people from swiping the animation swiping so many times the animation goes to a play rate value where it just stops working. They swipe 20 times, the animation can't play that well, the particles look bad, the audio quits firing correctly. So that's what this clamp is for. And this is no more complicated than grabbing a condition. A condition is if. It's anywhere in our script where we want to say the script has to choose what to do next. And it has to choose based on variable A or variable B, and it could go in multiple directions. So here we're going to compare integer. Oops, no, wrong one. Compare float, excuse me. We're going to do compare float after we've added the float. And what we are going to compare here is our result to the max number of swipes we want somebody to have. So the way we do that is by just a right click, create new float. Now this is going to be the number we use for all of the comparisons. So you'll do the same thing 3 times. but you want this number to be the same for all of them. So you can just pull it out, and then this next time you create a compare float, you can just attach it to the same number. And I have found that 10 is a reasonable maximum amount of swipes that we want to allow somebody to have. All right. So we have written a number into this slot here, and we're comparing it, making sure it's not the max, making sure that it is less than or equal to 10. And if it is less than or equal to 10, we are now going to write that float into a new little circle. We'll do that by going to New Action, and then where are you? Set Variable, Set Float. There we go. So A is less than or equal to B. Yes. So we now want to write this number that we just finished comparing, and we want to write it let's see. And we want to write it not to a new one, but we actually want to write it back to here. The reason being is that we are adding, every time somebody swipes, we are adding 1 to this number, and then comparing it, and then writing the total. We're adding that total back, or rewriting it back to this number, so that the next time it's swiped, we're adding 1 to the result. So we're long story short, we're taking, A plus B equals C. We're taking C, writing it here, and then after the comparison, we're making C the new B again, so that we are saying 1 plus 0 is 1, and then we're rewriting that 1 back to B, and then the next time it's saying 1 plus 1 is 2. And we're writing that 2 back to B, so the next time it says 1 plus 2 is 3, and then moving that 3 back to the B again. Okay, so now that we've got the math part of this straight, or at least the logic part of this straight, we want to know what happens when this comparison, when the number is greater than B. And all we're going to do is just print a statement to the screen to tell the player in a very simple way, hey, you've swiped too much, you've hit the max. New Action, Miscellaneous, and there's lots of options in here, but we want the simplest, log. All right, we're just logging the outcome here by saying when A is greater than B. We want to go to the properties and say print this statement. And we're going to say right here, max hit, or max beats, or stop it, that's enough, whatever you want, type it in right there. And then this is going to print that on screen, and you can tell it to print appended to a specific object. So in this case, we could say, hey, here's that interp actor. I'm just going to paste him in over here, copy paste him, and say, I want you to, where this guy exists anywhere in the screen, write this message. All right, so at this point we have handled the math, but our Matinee here still doesn't know when it's supposed to play. So that's the second component to all of this. This was the hard part. Next part is just setting up a simple timer to tell the Matinee when to fire off and what to do when it fires off. And we can do that with a new level loaded, which we happen to have right over here, and a delay. That's all we need. So we'll create a new action miscellaneous delay. The delay is going to loop so that it gives us a impulse out every 2 seconds. So we can just park that right after here. We don't want to park it at the end of this matinee because that means we'll be waiting for it, our little camera animation to finish. We'll just say right at this point, right here, we will do a delay. Now I think in the sample file I sent out, I have this part appended to a different level loaded. Doesn't matter. As long as it's attached to one of the level loaded so that this delay begins as soon as the level starts, you're in good shape. We're going to set that float value to 2 seconds, or to 2, so that the delay waits for 2 seconds. Then, every 2 seconds, we want this to play that matinee. But if I set it to play that matinee from right here, the matinee is going to play with a play rate of 0 and not do anything. So we need to write to this float value and make it a number, preferably the number of swipes somebody has swiped, to actually kick the animation off with an appropriate play rate. So we're now going to say, all right, new action, set variable, float. So every 2 seconds, I want to write this value right here to this number. So let's review this real quick. I have right here fetched the result of this addition and then written it to here. And I'm holding on to that number so that every 2 seconds, when this delay kicks off, it then fetches whatever this number is from here and parks it here in play rate. And this is important because if I just hooked this float straight up to play rate, then my timer would have been omitted and the play rate would change as quickly as somebody could swipe up and down. And our beats would not match up anymore. They would be dependent on when somebody swiped and the millisecond that they swiped, and that's not what we want. We want these to match up. So that is why we are going through all of this to store a number here in this circle, and then every 2 seconds waiting until that timer's up, and then we grab that number and push it here into the matinee. Now, we haven't actually played the matinee yet. Now that this number's been pushed in, we can go to play. All right, now this is going to work, but it's only going to work once. And that is simply because our delay is only going to fire off once. The way we solve that is simply by saying, hey, once you've written that number and kicked off that matinee, please start my delay again. All right. So now we have almost everything. We have everything we need for logic-wise for this, for a player to be able to swipe and have the beats match and have the animations kick off, and to have basically the machine working. What you'll do is recreate these steps just like we did before. Recreate these steps 2 more times for your other 2 beats. You can hook them up to swipe right and swipe down like I did. Now the last part of this tutorial is what we'll hook up to swipe up, which is simply a reset. The reset couldn't get simpler. So to start with the reset, I played a sound. This was on swipe up, and I just played a sound so you had some feedback. It felt like you were doing something, and we already know how to do that. That's simply new action, sound, play sound. All right. Like I said, this is when somebody, in my version, it's when you swipe up. The sound we're going to play is one that I had, had already copied and pasted, or had copied and am now pasting. It's just that same Simon video. I mean, Simon, from the Simon tutorial, the Simon fail sound. You can paste whatever you want in there. Grab whatever sound you want, dump it in there. And then I played that sound from the point at which the player is looking at the game, the camera. So, so it's, you know, it's playing relative to them. Now that the sound is played, we are going to reset the number of swipes. Again, that's the important thing here, right? Is that number of swipes. We're going to make sure that that number is set correctly. So we're going to reset it to 0 for everybody, since this is a reset, and we'll do that using set variable integer. I did it again. Set integer, set variable float. All right. So the value we want to reset everybody to is 0. And the person we want to reset to is this guy. This is the number that we're fetching for these animations. And like we said, on this, after this 2-second delay, that 0 is going to get fetched, parked here, and our animation will stop. And you'll just set up this exact same, I mean, you can use this same reset for your other for the other cached swipes you create for these other guys as well. You'll just create the one level reset block up here. And then the last thing we need to do is toggle off those particle effects that we had playing. And we already know how to do that. It's pretty straightforward stuff at this point. So it's just a new toggle. Turn them off. And the ones we're turning off are not the exploding ones, because we're just kicking those off on a single frame. We are turning off the ones that are drawing the arcs, the ones that we leave turned on for a long time. It's this guy that I called sparks. So we're going to turn that guy off. All right. So that is everything we need for our animation to work. And again, you'll recreate this block of logic for each of these, for swipe right and swipe down. Make sure that you take this node that is writing our value to the play rate, and you are connecting it to this delay so that they're all using the same delay. All 3 of these are kicking off at the same 2-second timer. And make sure that you are resetting them all from here as well, and that you're taking your cached swipe value here and changing it back to 0 when somebody swipes up, and then turning off the particle effects. All right. So with that set up, you should be able to go ahead and test it. Swipe left, animation's playing, got my explosion, sound looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and reset it. That's working. I'm not sure this is set up correctly. And this is why Unreal is an excellent engine. There's a lot of opportunity to easily test your work. And with so many different variables and moving pieces to your levels and work, it's easy to mess stuff up. And it looks like I forgot a very important part of our reset code. So let's fix that. All right, so it's fine and dandy that I turned off the particles and I reset the value to 0. You know what I didn't do? I didn't stop our animation. So we're going to grab stop. We'll just string it right up here to, after that float gets written to 0, we'll also our matinee. It also appears there's one last thing we have to set to make our reset here actually work. So we toggle the particles, reset this value to 0, we stop the animation, and rewind on play. This simply says that every single time an impulse hits play, that the matinee starts from 0 and it resets. we need this so that our animation always begins from the beginning, so that when people kick the drum beat off again, it starts from 0. And all our particle effects start from 0. So here we are. Rewind on play. Do not forget that. Now, once that's set, let's give this one more shot. Drum beat's moving on along. Reset. There we go. We are ready to rock. Our drum machine works. So there you go. That concludes the tutorial. I hope this helps you understand animating with Matinee and scripting with Kismet, and using simple comparison statements a little bit better, and gives you an idea of the amount of control and flexibility you have with the system. So go ahead and finish up those other two wheels, those other two animations, and enjoy your first animated game scene. Thanks a lot for watching.